Hi everybody, this video is going to talk about the effect of Whitespace in your code and whether or not Whitespace affects how the code compiles and whether or not it executes. So we've got a program written here, got an initial condition that starts by turning all the LEDs off and making sure they're off and staying in that state for a full second, and then it enters into an infinite loop where it blinks the red, yellow, and green LEDs all on simultaneously for half a second, and then turns those same three LEDs off for half a second, and it repeats that in an infinite loop. So when I compile that, we can see that it compiles, and when I download that to the microcontroller of the robot, it downloads, and when I click start, I'll first turn the robot brain on and then click start, you can see that the three LEDs blink like we expected them to, red, yellow, and green all together. So let's say I didn't write it quite like this. Let's say I had a bunch of extra white space in between, like the red LED and the number 1 telling that LED to turn on. If I download that to the robot, first compile it, it should compile, then download it and test it by pushing start, you can see that the LEDs still blink exactly like we expected them to. So that tells us that this extra white space that we added in did not affect our program at all. So anywhere that you have extra white space, or anywhere that I have extra white space in this program, is just to help me set apart different aspects of the sketch. So I prefer, after like labeling an identifier and before I tell it to turn on, I don't like when the equals sign is smashed together with the number 1. I think it looks a little bit easier visually if it's spread out like that with spaces on either side of the equal sign. That helps me set off the operator. It helps me set off the variable that says whether it's on or off, and it helps me see where the identifier ends. It helps me make sure that this is indeed a square bracket instead of something else. And the same thing is true if I add extra white space after a section of code. So I can section out my code using white space to divide this first section that turns all the LEDs on together and waits in that state for half a second. This white space here can separate that section off from the next section, which turns all the LEDs off and waits half a second. So I can use white space to divide my code and help me organize or chunk out my code to make it easier to understand. So, long and short of the story is white space doesn't affect your program at all. Thanks for watching this video. We'll see you again in another one.